guys, Miss Moore here. So I'm going to do a lesson on academic vocabulary with you today, but before we get started, I want to tell you about something that happened to me on Friday. So I was working in my house and I looked out of the back window, and in my backyard is a whole swarm of bees, like an actual swarm of bees, and it kind of freaked me out. But I kept watching them and they all landed on this branch in a tree in my backyard. Like the whole entire swarm of bees landed on this one branch together. So I texted my backdoor neighbor, who is Miss Wilson. If you remember her, she used to work with Miss Kazee. And I texted her because her husband, Mr. Wilson, he has beehives in his backyard. So I thought maybe he had done something to make this swarm of bees come out. And so she kind of thought that they were just the bees that were already in their backyard, and she didn't think much of it. Well, later that afternoon, they were outside, and I walked on my back deck and yelled over, and I said, "Your bees are up here in this tree." And he said, "What?" And I said, "Your bees, there's a whole swarm that landed on this branch up here." And so he came over and looked at it, and let me show you what he saw. Right, so here is a tree, and see that brown right there? That is the bees. All of those are bees. Okay, and so Mr. Wilson got a ladder. He's in the tree right here. There's Miss Wilson making sure he's safe. I was pretty nervous. And he is going to get these bees down. See, he's got a box in his hand. So he gets his clippers and he climbs up there and clips this whole swarm of bees off of this branch. And he just picked it up. Didn't bother him a bit. See all those bees in that branch? They weren't stinging him that I know of. And then so he put them in that white box, and then he put them in his hive. So that little green box is a beehive, just like this purple one right here. And inside of that looks like this. And they go down in there, and that's where they make all the honey. And those are all his beehives right there. So I thought that was so cool, because I've never really seen that many bees up close like that. And it wasn't necessarily something I would want to do because they still scared me a little bit, but it got me thinking, well, we should do a lesson on bees. I should read about bees because I don't know a lot about bees. So I wanted to read some more about it. So that's what we're going to read about today. So I went to Epic and just searched for bees. Let me get back to my front page and found this book, Bees Matter. Now I know I have heard quite a bit about how honeybees are dying and we need to do better to keep them alive, but I don't exactly know why, so I think this book is going to tell us about it, and I am excited to read about it. So while we read today, we are going to look at determining the meaning of general academic words in a text, and that's RI.5.4. So today we're going to specifically focus on using context clues and using prefixes, roots, and suffixes. And the words I want you to listen for are bioindicator, stamen, reproduce, pollination, pollinators, interdependent, and interact. Okay, maybe you're already seeing some prefixes or suffixes in those words. All right, so this book is Bees Matter. And this is on Epic, so I've sent you guys an invite to get on Epic. Tell your parents to check their email, and you can get on and read the book with me. All right, so bees as bioindicators. Ooh, there's that word already. Bioindicators. That is a big word, and I don't know what that means. But I do see the prefix bio. And I know that the prefix bio means life. So I'm going to stick that up on my prefix side of our board. And Bioindicator, well, if I know bio means life, and an indicator, I see the word indicate in here, and if something is indicating something, maybe it's like telling me something about the life. Okay, let's read. A swarm of honeybees hovers over a hillside of flowering plants. Blossoms extend out long, skinny structures called stamens. Tiny powder-like grains called pollen cling to the ends of the stamens. Okay, so a stamen, it tells me, that was on our list, and it tells us, because remember our context clues sometimes just come out and tell us the definition of a word. Long, skinny structures. And what clings to the ends of the stamens? Pollen. Well, we all know what pollen is because there is a lot of it outside, that yellow dusty stuff that is making a lot of us sneeze. The bees gather food from the flowers for their hive. At each blossom, pollen sticks to the bees' hairy bodies. The insects dart from flower to flower. Pollen spreads among the plants. Another way that we can find the definitions of words is to look at the glossary or a dictionary. And on Epic, it's really cool. If you don't know the meaning of a word, you can click on it.
Stamen.
And it will pronounce the word for you and give you a definition. An organ of a flower that consists of an anther and a filament and produces the pollen. So the stamen is the part of a flower that produces the pollen. Up here, I'm reading the caption. Some bees, such as honeybees and bumblebees, carry pollen with the flat part of their hind leg, called pollen baskets. You can kind of see that in the picture. The great relationship. Many plants need pollen from other plants of the same species to reproduce. Oh, there's another big word. You might remember this word from science, reproduce. Let's look at our list over here. What prefix do you see in the word reproduce? Yep, re. Do you remember what re means? Re means again. So add that one to our list. Re means again. So to produce again. To produce means to make. So I'm thinking something like to make again. Let's check what our Epic says.
Reproduce.
To produce new individuals of the same kind, to cause to exist again, to imitate closely. So, were we right? Pretty much. They rely on pollinators such as bees to help with this. Pollination allows plants to produce fruits and vegetables. These contain seeds that may become new plants. Nectar attracts bees to flowers. Nectar is a sugary liquid made by plants. Bees use nectar and pollen for food and to make honey. As bees take nectar from flowering plants, they spread pollen. Bees and plants are interdependent. This means that both living things need each other to survive. Without bees, many plants would die, and bees would starve without plants. The relationship is part of the balance of the natural world. Okay, so we had lots of words in our list in that section. So first of all, I see pollinators and pollination. Okay, so we know what pollen is, and I see the word pollen inside both of those words. So think about your suffixes. Right here, O-R-S, ors. Think about doctors, teachers, which is E-R-S, but same meaning. Those are people who do something. One who doctors, one who teaches. So the suffix ors means one who. So a pollinator is one who pollinates. Then we have pollination. Again, we've got that word pollen in there. So the suffix tion is a quality or action. So pollination, I would say, would be the action of pollinating. So the pollinators are responsible for the pollination. We also had the word interdependent. Bees and plants are interdependent. So that's a prefix that you might not know yet, because that's one that we haven't talked about a lot this year. And that prefix, inter, means between. So if you see the word interdependent, I see my prefix inter, and then I see the word depend. So if you depend on somebody, that means you need them for something, right? So interdependent means they depend on each other. Bees and plants are interdependent. Says that both living things need each other to survive. They have to have the things that they do, they need it to survive for both of them. So interdependent. Without bees, the plants would die, and without the plants, the bees would starve. It's all part of the ecosystem. All right, let's keep reading. Busy bees. Honeybees can travel up to 6 miles or 10 kilometers from the hive. On each trip, a bee can gather pollen from 75 to 100 flowers. One bee can make 12 to 15 flights per day. Bees always return to the same hive. Inside every hive is a queen bee. The queen keeps the hive healthy by laying eggs. A single queen bee can lay up to 2,000 eggs in one day. The number of bees in a hive changes throughout the year. In summer, a hive can house more than 80,000 bees. With such high numbers of bees, a hive can collect pollen from more than 500 million flowers in a year. Bees use the pollen to feed growing bees. If you look at this picture here, those are beehives, kind of like the one that Mr. Wilson has in his backyard. And it says, beekeepers keep bees in man-made hives. Cold winters can greatly reduce hive populations. They use nectar to make honey. The bees store up the honey to eat during winter. Winter is a hard season for bees. The number of bees in an average hive drops to approximately 25,000. Bees spend winter keeping themselves and the queen alive. The queen slows or stops laying eggs. The bees group together, fluttering their wings and moving around. Clusters help bees stay warm. Bees take turns being on the outside of the cluster, but the queen always stays at the center where it is the warmest. Bees do not leave the hive in winter. This little text box says, perspectives, beekeepers. Beekeepers rely on bees for their livelihood. Winter is hard on bees, and bees dying from cold winters is part of beekeeping. As much as an 18% loss is often thought of as acceptable, but when beekeepers lose 40 or 50% of their hives in a single season, it is a big blow to their income. Income is how much money they make. Keeping bees in hives healthy can be expensive. Okay, here's a map that shows that how much bee loss there is by state. Remember earlier I said that I had heard about how bees are dying and it's not good for our economy? Well, this shows how much. This map of the United States shows the percentage of hives that died in each state from 2014 to 2015. How does hive loss vary around the country? What areas have the highest hive loss? So we are right here in North Carolina, and we are at 30 to 40% hive loss. Looks like these dark teal areas are the highest. It is not uncommon in very cold winters for some colonies to die off, but other factors can make hives more vulnerable. Bees interact with many plants in their environment. Ooh, I see a word with that prefix, inter. Bees interact. What did that prefix inter mean? Or do you remember? It means between. So the prefix inter with the word act, you're acting between. The actions between the bees and the plants. Bees are also sensitive to small changes. These two things make them excellent bioindicators. A bioindicator is a species that gives humans information about the health of its ecosystem. The health of a bee colony helps people understand the health of the world around it. Okay, so there was that first word that we looked at earlier, bioindicator. A species that gives humans information about the health of its ecosystem. So it's indicating the information about the health of the life in the ecosystem. So we thought about that word, and now our context clues are giving us an exact definition. The health of a bee colony helps people understand the health of the world around it. Bees on the decline. Decline means it's going down. Since the early 1900s, the populations of many types of bees have been dropping. A number of species are endangered. Some are even believed to be extinct. One endangered species is the Franklin's bumblebee. This type of bee was once common in Northern California. Warming temperatures and loss of habitat started to hurt the bumblebee's ecosystem in the mid-1990s. Between 1998 and 2001, sightings of Franklin's bumblebees dropped greatly. The bees are now near extinction throughout the Pacific Northwest. Between the 1940s and 2015, the number of honeybee colonies in the United States dropped from 5 million to 2.5 million. In the winter of 2006, more than 30% of U.S. honeybee colonies were lost. The loss was 2 times the expected drop. Winter losses have remained higher than normal since. As bee populations drop, many plants also die. Orchid flowers in the Amazon rainforest are one example. Many orchids in this region need a specific type of bee for pollination. If those bees die, the orchids are not able to reproduce. So there's that word, reproduce. They're not able to bloom again. They'll die. Bee health indicates the health of the surrounding environment. And when an ecosystem breaks down, all living things are affected, including humans. All right, so we've learned a little bit about bees. We've talked about some academic vocab. I want you to think about those prefixes and suffixes and remember that that's how you can figure out the meanings of words, and always use your context clues, especially in this academic text and informational text. A lot of times they'll tell you what the word means because it's so technical and they don't expect you to always know all these words without reading about them. So there's your vocab of the day, and I have a challenge for you. So I want you to think about what we read about how the bees are on the decline. They are going down. They are dying. What can you do at your home to help the bees? Well, think about it. I'm not going to tell you anything yet. I want you to tell me. What can you do to help bees in your community? Just like Mr. Wilson saved that swarm of bees, what can you do? I don't expect you to go out and save a swarm of bees, but what can you do? Think about it and comment and let me know. Thanks. See you later.